My name is Runa Grydeland. I'm from Norway, and motorcycles and solo adventure are my passions. You can find me under the name Off She Goes on both YouTube and Instagram.
Hi, I'm Simon Josie, and welcome back to the podcast. So, as you heard in the introduction, my guest today is Runa Grydeland, known for her Off She Goes YouTube channel and Instagram account of the same name. If you've seen Runa's Off She Goes videos, you'll be familiar with her laid-back and chill approach to taking us along as she explores solo on her adventure bike. Yes, that's right, yet another Norwegian filmmaking motorcyclist. I guess I'm going to be accused of some sort of Norwegian bias soon. Before we get to my chat with Runa, note that I had to throw some audio cleanup software at Runa's recording as there was some pesky electronic noise on the beginning of it. Fortunately, it only impacts the first 9 or so minutes of the interview, so please persist with the episode as Runa provides some really interesting insights into being a YouTube creator. As always, if you have the time and inclination, please consider rating or liking the podcast in your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. This will help other listeners find the podcast. As I've noted previously, I've established a presence for the podcast on Instagram under the handle real.riders, on Blue Sky under the handle Real Riders Podcast, and also as @RealRiders on the platform formerly known as Twitter, but now rebranded X. I'll be posting whenever new episodes of the podcast drop, so please do repost, reskeet, and retweet to help get the word out there about the podcast. Righto then, please now enjoy my discussion with Runa. Hi Runa, welcome and thanks for joining me for this episode of Real Riders. How are you doing?
Hi Simon, and thank you so much for having me. I'm doing pretty good this day. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So you're known for Off She Goes on both YouTube and your Instagram account. I understand you've been motorcycling for about 3 years. Can you tell me how you got started in motorcycling and why you came to motorcycling relatively late?
So this is a little bit of a longer story, I guess. First off, both my parents actually used to ride motorcycles when they were younger. My dad still rides. He's one of the 60-plus men on a GS Adventure motorcycle. And I've always thought that at some point in life, this is something I would like to do as well. But time and money just never really was enough to make it happen. Up until recently, up until 2020, I competed internationally in archery. So I was on a national team for archery for like 11 years and was pretty serious about that. So there was really no time to do this. But when the pandemic hit in 2020, all of a sudden all competitions and everything, trainings, whatever, were canceled. And I worked as a nurse at the time. So I had a lot of time. I worked a lot. So all of a sudden I had both time and money. So that summer I decided, I'll just go for it and see where it goes. I didn't really know, how big of a deal it was gonna be. But as soon as I got my license, because I mainly took my license because I think motorcycling seems like a cool way to travel, not because of the speed or the thrill of the riding fast or whatever. So the week after I got my license in the summer of 2020, I packed up my Suzuki VS 750 1986 model with my camping gear and whatever, and went off for like about a week just to see if this is something I would like. And 3 years later, here we are.
So you were licensed in Norway, and I've heard that it's quite expensive and takes quite a long time in Norway to get your license. Is that correct?
It is quite the process. There's a lot of mandatory classes, both theory and classes you need to go through and pass. And it is quite expensive. I think I spent like the minimum amount you can spend is about 2,000 euros to get the license. And then you have to have like a approved helmet, gear, all that kind of stuff. So you're easily looking at like 3,000-4,000 euros just to get started. And then you need a bike as well. So it kind of adds up.
And are there any restrictions on the kind or the size of bike that you can have for a certain period of time or anything like that?
Yes, there are. I think these are like a common European rules where There are different classes, and you have to be a certain age or have a certain type of license for a specific amount of time before you can ride the bigger CC engines.
Right. So, what's actually your history with motorbikes? What bike did you start with? What other bikes have you had, and what are you riding now?
So my first bike, like I said, was the Suzuki Intruder, 1986 model, veteran. They're pretty cheap to have. They're cheap to buy. So I figured that was a cool way to start. And also I've seen, with my parents' albums, they were riding this kind of bikes, and wow, that looked really cool. But after a while, I realized they're not the most practical bikes to travel on. I ran out of gas a few times because you can't see how much gas is left, and that kind of stuff, and just the reliability in general. So I pretty soon started, doing my research on YouTube, of course, to see what options were. And I discovered the adventure bikes. And just a couple months later, I bought a secondhand KTM 790 Adventure. I had that for about a year. Did my first really long trip on that one. And then randomly, I went to a motorcycle gathering where dealers can come and show off the bike, and you can try all kind of different bikes. And I tried a Tenere, and I was like, now I need this one because I just like this riding experience so much. So that fall, the year after, I got the Tenere 700. I rode that for about a year. And then this spring, I teamed up with Husqvarna Motorcycle Scandinavia. So I've been their ambassador this year, riding the Northern 901.
Yeah. So this is interesting to me. I noticed that you changed to the Norden, and in May of 2023, so earlier this summer, you actually released a really interesting video outlining your first impressions about the Norden. And another thing about that video was that it was really interesting to me, very memorable, because you were extremely transparent about how you came to be in possession of that bike. And I don't recall ever seeing in the sort of the motorcycling video genre on YouTube another video quite like that was so honest about your relationship with Husqvarna and how you came to have that bike. Why did you want to make that video? Why was that so important to you?
I think it's for myself, starting to watch similar videos from other content creators, I was left with so many questions, like, how do you make this happen? How does this work? What is the deal? Like, how do you get to that point? And I feel like people really kind of gatekeep that information, not wanting to get too personal probably about economy and contracts and whatever. So for me, it's been, I would like to be more transparent about this kind of stuff, just because it was information that I was kind of seeking out, starting out, and I couldn't find it anywhere because no one was talking about it. So yeah, it's just, for me, it's money is money. It's not too private for me. I think it's better to be a little bit transparent.
And I mean, I have to ask, and I know I'm in danger of becoming the Sweden hating podcast, and if anyone who's heard the Thomas Hansen interview will know what I'm talking about. But are there any special clauses in your contract with Husqvarna requiring you to say nice things about Sweden? I realize it's perhaps not the most exciting place to go motorcycling, but are there things that you are required to say in each, video that you put out that say nice things about the flat and featureless countryside of Sweden?
So I obviously can't discuss the details of the contract, but I can discuss what's not in there, and that's definitely not in there.
Okay.
I think you've seen some of my latest episodes riding in Sweden, probably. And I think I'm, myself as well, trying to not piss off the Swedes with saying that, holy shit, this is boring.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps to take the pressure off the Swedes, you could also perhaps say the same thing about northern Finland. I mean, I've only been up to Tampere myself in Finland, but I was somewhat amused and when you said in one of your recent videos that you hadn't been to Finland before, and it's like, oh, but you live just right next to Finland. And then, of course, you look at the countryside and of Norway. And okay, there's lots of nice lakes and forest in Finland, but perhaps not much else. Believe me, I love the Finns. Please, Finland, don't hate me, because I've been to Finland a number of times. I worked for a Finnish company for 20 years plus. I love Finland and I love the Finns. So there's no Finnish hate here. But yeah, that was something that I did find a bit amusing. And again, your honesty coming through in that video when you were saying, yeah, it's getting a little bit boring, today riding down this road. Yeah.
It's there's a lot of like wildlife, and if you're into wildlife and hiking and hunting and fishing, that kind of stuff, I think it's a paradise. And also if you just want to ride fast on gravel road, Sweden is a paradise because we barely have any roads in Norway. You're allowed to ride on gravel roads. So if you want to get loose and really have fun in gravel, Sweden is a paradise for that.
Sure. And what about the filmmaking? When did you actually start making the videos? And had you done any of that before you got into motorcycling?
I do not have any video experience from prior to motorcycling. Just like anyone else, when I dived into the YouTube universe, looking at motorcycle videos, I discovered Itchy Boots, got to go on her bike, all these female solo travelers. And I thought, holy crap, this is so cool. I wonder if I could do something similar, both to share the experience of what it's like to be a rookie on the road, but also for myself to kind of capture the moments during my travels. So I actually, like I said, I got my license in 2020. The next year, I planned my first big trip. So I went 28 days to all kind of four corners of Norway. So Lindesnes, which is the southern point, West Cape, North Cape, and Vardø, which is the most eastern point. And that was altogether just over 7,000 kilometers. And I really wanted to capture that trip originally. And I started out pretty good, like the first couple days. But this was also my first time riding with a lot of luggage, first time being on a long trip. So there was just so much like new stuff going on. And eventually that trying to wrap my head about the filming and how much time and effort that actually takes, it took out so much of the joy of the travel. So after about a week, I just packed down all my camera gear and sent it home and just thought, I'm just going to have to try to actually do this trip and see if I enjoy this before I can bring a camera on board and do that as well. It was just too much new stuff at the same time. So I came home not knowing, if I would like this or dislike this, or if I wanted to do this ever again. But just like a month later, I packed up and went for about a week traveling, just with the thought of, I don't care where I go or how far I go. I'm just going to focus on, filming and getting into the habit of doing that and see if I like that. And that's the first series you can see on my YouTube channel, the August solo motorcycle trip in Norway.
Obviously, you were learning how to film as you were riding. When did you start doing the editing and the post-production? Were you doing that during that trip, or did you do that after you came back?
I've been doing that most of the time after the trip, not wanting to bring a computer and kind of take out the joy in the evenings of having to sit with all the files and editing and that kind of stuff. So, and since that was only a week as well, I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know the softwares. I didn't know anything. And then that time I thought, filming is going to be the hard part, the most time consuming part, until I started to learn about the editing process when I got back home. So I spent so much time that fall. I think I spent like almost 6 months just releasing like 6 or 7 episodes, just learning how to edit and all that stuff. And it was very, very time consuming.
And this is something, I've dabbled in this area myself for many years. And the thing I noticed when I first started editing video is that actually it really changes your video filming habits. Is that something that you found, like after you had edited that first series, then when you went out on the next trip, did you suddenly know, oh, I know the kind of shots I'm going to need?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So there's so many times where I've gotten back home and I'm just so mad at myself for not capturing more of specific moments or specific scenery or putting the drone more in the air or having more B-roll. sitting there just with a lot of GoPro footage, which is not super interesting to look at most of the time. So it's definitely been a process of learning what kind of shots I want. And now when I start a day, I kind of, I know I want the introduction to the day. I know I want the middle part, know what's going on, and I want to summarize the day. So now I can more kind of, as the day goes by, I kind of summarize in my head what the video is going to look like, sort of. So it's definitely been a learning curve.
One of the things that you say you're passionate about is solo adventuring. And I'd like to explore that a little bit more. What do you find so appealing about traveling solo?
So ever since I was a little girl, I've always appreciated spending time on my own. I don't really appreciate being in bigger crowds with a lot of people. I don't have social anxiety or anything like that. I just appreciate the time spent alone. Going into traveling, especially as a rookie, like a beginner motorcycle traveler, I found it very nice to ride alone in the beginning because I wanted to ride in whatever pace I wanted, do how many stops I wanted, ride how far I wanted that day, and just really make it about figuring out what kind of riding I really want to do and not having to push my limits or miss out of a lot of the experience just because I'm following someone else doing what they want. And I ended up really liking that as well. So now it's just, also I think it's very hard to find someone to travel with that you don't have to make too many compromises with when you travel. So I want my trip how I want my trip. And I know that with all the stops I make for filming and recording, that kind of stuff, it takes up so much time that having someone on board, I think they could easily get bored with all the stops and everything that comes into recording videos.
Yeah, I've done quite a lot of scuba diving, and I see this massive parallel between scuba diving and motorcycling, which is that the more diving I do, the more I want to only dive with the people that I like diving with. And I sort of feel the same way about motorcycling. And I think the added extra with motorcycling and making films about motorcycling is, yeah, you have to stop so often, right? And and maybe that can be a real drag on the people you're traveling with if they're not as enthusiastic about doing what you're trying to do, which is put together your B-roll and really put together a story, which is, takes a lot of time and different camera angles, et cetera, et cetera.
And just also the getting used to filming in front of people, like, having your camera on a selfie stick in front of people, talking to, no one, that also takes getting used to and being comfortable in front of the camera, in front of other people, because people will look and wonder, who are you and what are you doing?
Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit about your current audio video capture setup. So what cameras are you using and how do you mount them? I know you've tried various solutions for capturing sound, and sometimes that's been a challenge for you. But I understand if I've been a close and observant follower of your videos, it looks like you've changed your cameras as well since when you first started. So what are the reasons for that?
Yeah, I've changed a lot of my gear. This year, actually, I started out with the GoPro 7 Black just because it was a cheaper option, but still recording pretty decent video quality. I had a couple episodes where the GoPro would just freeze. And I know this is a common problem where you actually have to take out the battery and reset the whole camera before it can start recording again. And I missed out on quite a few good shots because of that. And that was so annoying. Also, the battery life was pretty low, like 20, 30 minutes. So I had to change the battery so many times during the day. So I did some research and decided I wanted to use the DJI Osmo Action 3, which I'm currently using. The reason I'm using that instead of the other GoPro is because the insecurity of not knowing if it's going to freeze up or not. I know the newer GoPros don't really have that problem as much, but it's just an insecurity that's embedded in my brain right now. So I figured I'll just change brand and use the DJI. The problem that occurred with that one was audio. recording the microphone in my helmet, because I do have a helmet microphone recording talking as I ride. In my GoPro, I just used a Rode microphone with a USB. You need the adapter for the GoPros as well. And then you just plug the Rode microphone right in, and it recorded pretty okay sound. With the DJI, as soon as you plug in a microphone, it distorts the sound so badly. So it just sounds like you're shouting into the microphone, and it's just so not nice at all. And it turned out to be a little bit of a process finding something to work around that. So I bought the DJI mic that I'm using currently, which is a wireless microphone. The downside about that is, number one, it's not a waterproof solution, obviously, because you have to have the transmitter or the receiver plugged into the camera, and also the battery life. So constantly having to check if you're running out of battery or not, having to charge in the middle of the day, and that kind of stuff. So I really wanted not a wireless a solution. So I ended up buying like the cheapest microphone I could find on pretty much eBay, because they record audio pretty like on a low level. I don't know how you call that, but like when you record it sounds pretty low. Like there's not a lot of, it's not a high sound. And also a little thing in between where you can decrease the gain even more. So when I transport my audio into my editing software, I can barely hear my audio at all. And I have to crank it up almost like 30 decibels to actually hear my voice. But at least the sound is not distorted. And it filters out a lot of the background noise and that kind of stuff. So it's pros and cons.
And what's currently missing from your audiovisual gear kit? Is there something you'd like, or something that you're planning to get in the near future?
Not really. So I do have two DJIs, one that I mount on my motorcycle filming towards me. I have one on my helmet filming kind of in front of me and the view and with the talking. I use my iPhone 14 Pro just for the video off the bike or when I'm filming myself, talking, etc. And then I have the DJI DJI Mini 3 Pro, the drone, for aerial footage. So that's pretty much all the camera gear that I have.
If I'm not wrong, in the beginning you were also using a DSLR, I think, for your B-roll, but it looks like you don't need that because your iPhone is good enough. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So when I went to Iceland, I before that trip, I bought a DSLR, wanting to try to learn how to use that for better footage, better pictures. That takes a lot of time. And I quickly found out that just with the iPhone, with the normal settings there, I could take quicker and better footage than with my DSLR. But this fall, I actually purchased again a new camera. It's a Canon R50. And I'm in the process of learning how to use that better, both for pictures and footage, because I really want to, I almost want to evolve and try to get better and capture better photos and video.
One of the things that's very characteristic of your videos, I'm not sure it's every season, but I think it might be, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you take delight at the end of a riding day showing us, the viewers, where you've ridden on a physical map. So, I mean, the option, I guess, could have been to do it digitally, which is maybe not the easiest thing in the world, but you seem to really enjoy doing it on the map. And has that been a deliberate sort of artistic decision right from the beginning? Or is it just a practical decision?
Both, actually. So this, I call it just the Itchy Booth method, because you can see it in all of her videos, how she shows on a map where she's went that day. And I always thought that was so interesting to see on a physical map, because you can kind of better see the distances and the road and where you are in the country. And I just like that, the way she talked her way through where she's been that day and that kind of stuff. So I've kind of adopted that. And also because creating digital map just takes even more time. I've not yet really figured out how to do that. Also on my to-do list on learning stuff. But especially now for the last part of my trip through Scandinavia, because I purchased a map over Scandinavia that turned out to be the size of my tent. It is massive. And also, when riding the Trans-Euro Trail, which is not really, you can't see the tracks. Most of the tracks you can't see on the actual map, physical map. So it was really hard to, find the ways I've actually ridden that day. So now I'm just showcasing Google Maps and showing starting points, stopping points, and whatever, I go throughout the day.
I'd like to ask a few more questions about your pre-production shooting and post-production process. And this is the first question, and you've sort of talked a little bit about it, but the first question I want to ask is do you plan each video? Do you have a firm idea what you want to do, or do you just sort of head out there going, I'm just going to capture a lot and I'll figure out the story when I get back and cut it in post-production? What's your approach? What do you find has been most successful?
I've only tried the second option because I am so bad at planning. As you can see in most of my series, I, in general, do not really have a set plan on where I'm going or what I'm going to do. It's more like I'm going from this point to that point, and then we'll just see what roads I take in between, basically. So that's the same story with filming each day. I don't really know where I'm going, don't really know what's going to happen most of the day. So it's just whatever happened that day is part of the video. But that's also something I'd like to try to change, be a little bit more planned, because there's so many times where I miss out on things just because I haven't planned well enough, like attractions and spots and places, views, whatever that I miss out on because I wasn't aware that they were nearby. So I'm going to try to find like somewhere in between because I don't want to have it completely set as well. I like being a little bit loose in my planning and doing whatever I want to do that day, riding how far or short I want that day in whatever direction. So that's just part of figuring out as you go.
You touched on this a little bit earlier as well, a plan for the day, or maybe plan's not the right word, but like a formula for the day in terms of what you're capturing. So sort of a beginning to the day, and there's a lot of pictures of you eating, which I think you're very brave to do, because often it's like one of the golden rules on film. I think actors say, please don't ever film me eating because it's so difficult. But you're extremely brave. We're often seeing you having something to eat, and that's kind of nice. But yeah, do you follow a set formula for shooting?
Just that I want like introduction for the video, preferably just some shots of the campsite or the view around, that kind of stuff. A little bit of talking in the beginning, telling, what I think is going to happen that day. Then the day goes on, whatever happens. And then at the end of the day, I try to recap it and, summarize the day. And if I know what's going to happen the next day, I might mention that. But that's pretty much the only formula I have.
And what strategies do you follow to try and avoid becoming stale and just shooting the same video every day? Is that something that you think about, or do you think that's been a problem, or what? How do you deal with that?
So while I'm traveling, I haven't given that very much thought because there's always so much happening anyway. You don't feel like the day is boring. But when you get back home and start editing things, I often thought that I do the same thing every single day. Is it going to get boring? Will people like this? Because I like very chill rides. I like low pace, good view, coffee, just having a good time. There's very little like extreme riding and exciting stuff going on, like you can see in many other travelers' videos where they cross borders and they get stuck in whatever places. You won't find that in most of my videos. It's very low pace, chill, good views and good times. So I have often thought, is this going to get boring, like the same thing every day? But it seems like people enjoy it. And that's one of the things I regularly get comments on. Like, I really like the chill pace. There's no screaming, there's no blah, blah, blah. There's just a good time on the bike.
I went back and looked over your videos on YouTube because I was interested in this one topic, which is the duration of each video. And I get the feeling that as time has gone on, the average length of the video has got a little bit longer. Certainly from the first series to like series 1, I think everything was under 10 minutes, and now we're up to season 5, and things are sort of nearer the 20-minute mark. Has that been a conscious decision on your part? Is that something that the viewers have pushed you to do, or is it just something that you feel you've got so much to show that each episode is just naturally going to be longer? What's your thinking behind that?
That's not a conscious decision, really. In the beginning, I actually got a few comments saying I really appreciate that the episodes are pretty short, because then I can watch it while having my breakfast or lunch or whatever. But I think in the beginning, I wasn't very conscious about what I was filming. There was very little B-roll, less talking. So now eventually, I guess I've gotten into the habit of just filming more of my day and telling more about what I experience, and just include that as well. So there is a lot of the day that I usually don't include. I have quite a bit of footage always that I don't include because I think that it just gets too boring. So I try to just include the bare minimum of what happened that day to give an impression of that day.
You also just touched on this a little bit, but a massive part of your videos is talking while you ride, which I think has been a characteristic right from the beginning. Why is that so important to you? Why have, especially overcoming the challenges that you had with the audio equipment, you've really wanted to do the talking while you're riding? So yeah, why has that been so important?
I think people have a little bit of a love-hate relationship to that. Like either you like it or you really don't like it. For me, I think it just brings like a really personal aspect of the trip. Being able to tell exactly what's on my mind when things happen and where I go and what I see, and the little mishaps and, whatever happens. I just think it's nice to record. Just brings a little bit more personal touch, I think.
And apart from equipment issues, which you've had from time to time, as everyone does, have you had any dramas or when capturing footage while you're riding? I'm thinking more of interactions with other people. Like, has that caused, or have you had any experience with people objecting to you filming either them in the background or anything like that? Have there been any issues like that?
No. And that's the positive part, I guess, about traveling to places where there's not a lot of people. Most of my videos, you can't see a whole bunch of people around me because I'm usually alone. So I'm rarely in the position where I film others in my videos as well. The only interaction I've had was not with the person. It was with the hawk that attacked my drone when I was in Iceland. That was the one thing that I can think about that was a little bit distressing.
And talking about drone footage, you've captured some really stunning footage in Norway and in Iceland. But recently in one of your videos, you explained that actually capturing drone footage in Sweden is a bit of a nightmare. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it really is. So the drone laws in Sweden are pretty much the same as in any country in Europe regarding to where you can fly or how far away from the airports you have to be. But publishing the footage online or sharing it on social media or sharing it just in general is a pain in the ass. So what you have to do is they have an organization, or what you want to call it, that goes through all your footage and says yes or no, you can or cannot publish this. So you have to go into a map, plot in every single place where we have recorded things, just like the area that the footage is captured, the dates, and send in all the footage to them. They will go through it and then come back and say yes or no. And they say it's going to take like a couple of weeks. It doesn't. It takes a lot more time. 6 weeks for me, I think it took before I got it back saying yes, this is all right. So it's strange, really, because if you were just standing on a mountain filming a view over the forest, that wouldn't be a problem if you're just capturing with your phone. Or if you're on a, let's say, ladder or whatever, capturing footage from above. But just as soon as you fly the drone, the rules change.
Interesting. Do you have any idea why that is? Is it for military secrecy or something like that?
Yeah, they say it's to protect national interests, or what you can say, both military places or just in general locations that they don't want to show most people, I guess.
What are your go-to resources for the music that you use in your videos?
I've used Epidemic Sound since the beginning. Yeah, good option. They have a great variety of music.
And when you're doing your editing, what comes first, the music or the video? In other words, do you cut your video to a piece of music, or do you first assemble your video sequence and then find some music that fits with that video?
It's both at the same time usually. So I'll start with just assembling, I'll start with just putting the footage I want on a timeline without cutting it. And then I'll start at the beginning, going through it and seeing, I kind of want this music here. I'll find some music, put it on the timeline, and then cut the clips on that music. And then I pretty much do both at the same time.
And in terms of post-production, and if we think about the more recent, like the series or the season 5 videos, how long are you spending in post-production doing the editing, getting the music, etc., for each episode?
Oof. Obviously, this has gotten a lot quicker as I've learned more and kind of gotten into. I have like a process on the whole thing, but now approximately somewhere between 8 to 10 hours, I'd say, editing one video.
Right, and I guess with the heavy winter in Norway, it's perhaps quite a nice time to be catching up on all the post-production work. Which part of the overall process, if we talk about pre-production, the planning or the lack of planning, the shooting and the post-production, do you most enjoy, and which part is the least enjoyable?
Of course, doing the actual traveling and recording the footage is my favorite. My least favorite used to be subtitles for the videos, because YouTube have a automatic capture feature where they capture the subtitles automatically, and they tend to be so messed up that the timing is wrong, the words are wrong, there's no punctuations or nothing. So I had to go through all of that and correct it, drag it to the correct positions, and that just took so much time. But recently, I discovered that Riverside has a tool for this, like a transcription tool, where you can just upload the audio file and it gives you a SRT file with the timing, punctuations. They even have a lot of like the Norwegian city names and whatever correct. So that has saved me so much time.
Yeah, this seems to have been an AI success story. I know there's a lot of debate and discussion about AI at the moment, but in the video and audio, particularly the podcasting area, AI seems to have been a success story, particularly around transcription. So that's interesting. What part of the overall production process do you struggle with the most or find the most challenging?
Starting an episode and realizing that I'm just lacking footage. I'm not liking the footage that I've recorded. It just doesn't give the right vibe. And trying to make that work. Like, you just have some days that are off when you're traveling as well, like you do with any other day, where like I can just sense that my mood is off. My recording isn't very good. I haven't made enough stops doing B-rolls, so I have just very little to work with, and trying to make that into a decent video can be a real struggle. Yeah.
I'd like to ask a little bit now about your experience with publishing on YouTube and Instagram. So if we look at YouTube, as we record this, you've got over 75 videos on your channel. Based on the feedback that you get from viewers and the view counts, what have you discovered works and what doesn't work?
Ooh, good question. I guess my kind of videos draw a specific type of audience as well. Just because it's very chill. You don't have that like exciting, thrilling drama stuff going on. So my average viewer are usually a little bit older, like adults. And that's a tough question.
I mean, have you noticed sometimes you see the view counts for certain videos and go, oh, I thought this was a great video, and yet maybe the view count is down a bit. On another one, you think, oh, this one was maybe not my best work, and the view count's gone crazy, and I just can't predict what's going to be popular and what's not. I mean, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I can relate to that very much. Like I can have a video where I think, oh, this is so cool. For example, the Northern tour that I did in Sweden, where I went to Örebro, Husqvarna in Örebro in Sweden, and did a 2-day off-road tour that was just into the forest, falling over a lot, bathing in mud, and just, yeah, it was so much fun. And I think that episode turned out pretty good. Just very different from what I normally do, interacting with people and being in a group. But that didn't really do so well. I got a lot of good feedback on it from my like regular viewers, but it didn't do better than any other video I've made. So it's very hard to predict what people are going to like or not. And I've done a lot of like research on the titles, what to include and not to include in the titles. For example, like solo motorcycle camping are words that are searched often. But you can't call every single video, solo motorcycle camping in Norway. It's really hard to predict.
Mm. And in terms of engaging with the audience, with your viewers, and the workload that can represent, I'm thinking specifically about reading and responding to comments. How have you found that, particularly on the long rides? Like, for example, this summer that's just passed, you did this massive, I think your longest ride through Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And I imagine that you're under a certain pressure from your audience to every day be keeping on top of those comments and responding and engaging. Tell me about that. I mean, I would find that exhausting after an exhausting day of motorcycling and setting up camp, etc. If I have to do that. How do you find it?
Getting into this in the beginning, getting comments and that kind of stuff was just super exciting, and I wanted to answer everything. And as soon as it started to increase, getting more comments, I still tried to catch up with it and answer everyone. But now it's just gotten to the point, I don't have like a ton of comments, but there's several hundred under each of my videos. And I simply can't keep up with it. It's a lot of work keeping up with both the comments there, but also my Instagram, all the messages I get there in the comments. And you feel kind of guilty sometimes because there's people leaving so many nice comments, so good feedback, so many nice messages that I read usually all of them, but I don't have time to reply to every single one. That would literally take days to kind of get into them and answer all of them. So that's a two-pointed sword, I guess. It's super nice to get them, and I read all of them, but there's simply not enough time to answer all of them. So I try to prioritize. Right now, I have a channel membership on my channel. So I prioritize my channel members, answer those comments, and then I try to answer most of the questions in my videos. Like if people have questions regarding my travel or equipment or whatnot. And then the feedbacks, I give them a like just to let them know I read it and I appreciate it.
Recently, you've written a little bit about your experience doing the long trip. And, this long trip through Norway, Sweden, and Denmark this past summer. And I got the feeling from a few things that you said that you're reassessing perhaps your approach to further motorcycle traveling in the future. And perhaps it's not something that you want to do full time, which is maybe what you tried to start doing at the beginning of this year, 2023. Do you want to expand a little bit on that and maybe share with us where you're thinking and why you came to think about or came to that sort of conclusion or that feeling this year?
So my approach this year, I quit my full-time job in February to do full-time content creation. And that's something I would like to keep up with. The thing that didn't work for me, you see all these travelers on YouTube and whatever, and they travel and travel for months and years and create content along the way, just being on the road full time. And I tried doing that this summer. Like I went off saying to myself, I don't know when I'm going to be back. I'm going to be on the road as long as I enjoy this. And I'm going to try doing all the work along the way as well with the editing. What my first mistake was not taking enough rest days. So I was traveling pretty much every single day. Starting the day, a full day of just recording and filming is a full day of work. It's not just pleasure. And then coming back to the camp, supposed to relax, but no, you're going to work more with editing. And I started with publishing 2 episodes per week this summer. So it was just like constant something to do and work. And the last week of my trip, I was so exhausted that I didn't really enjoy being on the road anymore. I want to go home. It's enough. I can't do this. And it was such a setback because I want to do what everyone else does. Why they can make it work, why can't I? But I think I realized I need to figure out what works for me. That's the most important part. What works for everyone else doesn't necessarily work for me. And if I'm going to do that again, I need rest days to catch up with work and just chill as well. So my approach for the upcoming year will be traveling without the editing part, just traveling, recording, coming back home, and then starting to work when I get home. Then leaving for a trip again, coming back, editing, and so on, just to separate them and having a better time both traveling and doing the work.
And what plans or hopes do you have now for your online presence? Can you see yourself heading in a specific direction, or do you feel that you have a clear idea of how you want to exist online and what you want to do or achieve? Has the last 2 or 3 years your experience, have you got now to a point going, yeah, I know what I want to do, I know what makes me happy, I know what I'm enthusiastic about?
Well, yes. I really, really like the work I'm doing now with just creating videos and publishing them and interacting with people online, pretty much sharing my experience and hearing their experience. I think my favorite part is getting feedback from other people saying that your trip inspired me to do my own trip. So that's a big motivation for me as well. But yeah, I think the road kind of gets made as I go. You get more contacts, you get more opportunities, the more you do. So yeah, I'll just see where I end up, I think.
I always like to ask, does the filmmaking enhance or does it diminish the pleasure of a motorcycle ride for you?
It enhances it, in my opinion. In the beginning, I felt a little bit weird about filming and talking to myself, but where I'm at right now, I feel like I have kind of all of my followers with me and I'm talking to them and sharing the experience with them. So in a weird way, it makes the travel less lonely, sort of. Also, getting back home and editing all the footage and being able to relive the whole experience and realizing how many moments I've already forgotten, that's a big part of it too. Just kind of going through the trip twice, pretty much.
That's a lovely answer. And just one final question: who in the filmmaking space do you particularly admire, and who do you take inspiration from? Who would you encourage your subscribers to also watch?
Oh, there's a lot of different ones. Obviously, Itchy Boots. She's a legend. The way she does her travels are fantastic. Thomas Hansen, as you already talked with has been a big, like whenever I've had questions about filming and video and equipment and all that stuff, I've gone to him, and he's answered all my questions. So, and he just makes great videos. Same with Eleanor Moto. I think she creates fantastic cinematic, nice footage and filming. And yeah, there's a lot of people but that's my top 3, I think.
Runa, thanks for being my guest on Real Writers today. Other than your YouTube channel and your Instagram account, is there anywhere else people can find you online?
I do have a website, but it's currently under construction, being updated, called offshegoes.net. But other than that, it's YouTube and Instagram.
Great. That's it for today. I look forward to watching more Off She Goes videos as they appear online. Thanks very much, Runa, and cheers.
Thanks for having me.